Welcome to Expanding Consciousness with Gina. It is such an honour to have Suzy Hansen. Welcome, Suzy.
Thank you, Gina. I'm very pleased to be here.
Thank you. So, Suzy is a New Zealand researcher, experiencer, and author, and she is the founding director from UFOCUS New Zealand, an investigator of UFO sightings for around 50 years, and the author of The Dual Soul Connection, The Alien Agenda for Human Advancement. She is also the coordinator of Communicator Link, a support network for experiencers, and serves on the executive board of ISA, the International Coalition for Extraterrestrial Research. Suzy has spent a lifetime in conscious contact with non-human intelligences, and she's here to share both her personal story and the bigger picture of what this contact might mean for humanity. She has been featured on a number of programs and TV shows, including History Channel's Ancient Aliens, on the Fade to Black show, National Geographic's Invasion Earth, and many more. You are just such a wealth of knowledge and experience, Suzy. Oh, it's such a privilege to have you here, and I can't wait to deep dive into just some of your experiences. I know we've only got an hour here together, and I wish we had days. um, so maybe just to start off with a little bit about how did this actually introduce itself to you in your life, because you've dedicated over 50 years. So where was the beginning for you?
The beginning for me, Gina, was when I was 8 years old and with my family and neighbours in Pukekohe, south of Auckland, we saw something inexplicable hovering over the Bombay Hills. So it was a glowing orange ruler hanging in the sky. It could have been a cylindrical shape. And of course, there was nothing back in the mid-60s that could create such a sight in the sky as that. It wasn't a helicopter, and it certainly wasn't a natural phenomenon. And so really that really excited my interest into what might be out there, because I was listening to my parents and neighbors calling it a UFO or a flying saucer, something like that, and so that really set my mind going about who might be flying it and where it might be from. We watched it for about an hour and a half, and during that time it didn't move, it just hovered and it flared. And actually, later in the evening, it moved off down towards the Waikato, and it was reported in the New Zealand Herald a day or two later, and it had been sighted by hundreds of people all the way down through the island to Waikato and further on. So it was a really eye-opening experience for me, and I think that really started off my interest in all things space and what might be out there.
Oh, amazing. And, I can only imagine how validating it is to actually know that your UFO experience was reported, because many people do see UFOs, but it's done in isolation where they have no idea if anyone else has seen it. And we don't see it reported in the papers these days. I have not seen a UFO sighting in the media for a very long time. Um, Tell us a little bit about what that meant for you, and did it give you confidence to continue researching or exploring the topic?
Well, I was only a child at the time, so it really engendered a great interest in me. But just your comment about people seeing who might have seen the same thing. Some years later, when I had a website and I was older, I posted the experience on the website, and I had a number of people contact me from places like Papakura, a farmer and his son who were south of Auckland on their farm shifting cattle at the time, and they saw it over the Bombay Hills. People further south who'd seen it. So I had this rash of people contacting me, and they were able to describe it the same as I, but also to sometimes to add some other features into it, especially those who were closer to it than our family was. So yes, having a sighting can be quite isolating in a lot of respects, because who do you report it to? And if you don't know who to report it to, or you get a bad reaction, you can carry that for a very long time, that bad reaction. But I think what really catapulted me into both sighting and contact research at a very young age in 1975 was when I was travelling on a lonely Hawke's Bay road with my flatmate, and this we saw this light ahead of us. It was flicking on and off. Two lights. We thought that they were the landing lights of agricultural aircraft going into land on a farm for the night. It was late afternoon, very sunny, shadows on the paddocks as the sun was beginning to go down in winter. And then a light appeared quite close beside us, disappeared again, and eventually came up behind us. It was quite a horrifying experience because the car was actually lifted off the road. I could feel the car leave the road as an aircraft does leaving the tarmac. You get that feeling in your stomach, and then you don't feel the tarmac under you anymore. And then we must have passed out, and we lost 90 minutes of time. Got back to our flat rather late, and we couldn't remember what had happened. We argued all the way home because we had differing opinions on what it could be. Having had a sighting at the age of 8 and had UFOs in my and he did not have it in his reality at all. And so he stuck to the rather illogical cause of the sighting as being a fast-moving helicopter. And he could not explain how it lifted the car off the road, how we lost 90 minutes, and how it was pitch black when we finally woke up again.
Wow, that's fascinating. And I think it hits on a really important topic around our perception and how we perceive things. And a lot of that perception can be on just how open our consciousness is and what our prior experiences are. So that's really fascinating. Two very kind of different recalls of the same event. And that's not uncommon with UFO sightings either.
No,
Yeah.
and it's actually sometimes a good thing. Sometimes a good thing. If you get some reports and all the witnesses say exactly the same thing in terms of emotions and everything, you do have a little bit of a warning bell going off in your head as if it's rehearsed. Recently, I received a sighting from a couple, a middle-aged couple who saw a large unusual shaped object pass over their house, and it took so long to pass over. You could see them in their security camera looking this way and very slowly turning their heads and watching it going over until their heads were facing that way. And they both drew the object slightly differently because they were standing apart. They had slightly different perspectives. And we all key into certain features and remember things that have some meaning to us or that are recognizable to us, and we can easily ignore others. But if the general idea, general perception matches reasonably well, then it's usually a pretty good sighting.
Mm, mm. Yeah, that reminds me just recently of being with a very small group of people and seeing a craft in the sky. And I perceived it as more circular with a circular halo that kind of emitted from it, whereas the person right next to me saw it as a triangular craft. And
Mm,
yet we had no doubt they were both seeing something, but we visually saw something different.
mm,
So,
mm.
mm,
Yep,
yeah.
that's the way it goes.
Yeah, let's talk us through the process. So someone's witnessed something and they feel within them they need to talk to someone or express it or report it because it has that significance to them. How do they get in contact with you, or where do they report it to? What happens there?
Well, we have a website, www.ufocusnz.org.nz, and that has a general sighting report form for the general public, and it has an aviation form for pilots or people who work in the aviation industry or field. So they can send that to us. We have had some disruptions in the last couple of years. I've actually had 5 of my team members pass away. So that's a huge chunk out of it, which means the workload is all mine. But they can send their report in, and we will comment on it. Those of us that are left will comment on it and maybe give you some information or point you in a direction. If anyone wants to talk about what they saw on the phone rather or on Zoom rather than just fill out the report, they can do that as well.
Thank you. And what a valuable service that you hold there. And just taking a moment to acknowledge the service of those that have passed as well, because I don't feel like it's ever expressed enough just how invaluable having someone there to report these things to and to talk through experiences is. Especially now as well, there seems to be more and more contact. Now, you've got just so much under your belt. You've both got the human connection, offering support for those that have had contact experiences, but you're very, very, professional in the way that you deal with other professionals, aviation experts, researchers, government, Ministry of Defence. Back in 2010, 2011, you're instrumental in getting some files released from the Ministry of Defence. Would you mind sort of just talking to us a little bit about that? I think a lot of people don't really know, what is New Zealand's Ministry of Defence doing? Do they know anything about contact or UFOs? I mean, we don't hear anything about it in our common media.
Yes, well, that's a good question. I don't really have an answer for that myself.
Mm-hmm.
Um, So, Ministry of Defence has held for many years a lot of sightings that have taken place, particularly in the early days. And I'd like to stress the point that 60s, 70s, 80s were a time of many, many UFO sightings in New Zealand. Our files on our 1960s and 70s, for example, are massive. The amount of activity that was going on and the really detailed and fabulous reports that we received during that time. Those who went before me and when I came in on the scene in 1975. So um, I think that the Ministry of Defence, this is my own personal opinion, has been contacted throughout the years. We know that after the Kaikoura light sightings of 1978-79, the government received some advice from the United States, who flew representatives out here. So we know that there has been contact with American officials at least, and possibly UK officials as well, and maybe other countries like Australia and the Commonwealth countries. Um, so when we first began writing to the then Chief of Defence, um, we actually were not that hopeful that we'd get a lot of material that we didn't already have. Um, and we acknowledge that there's probably some intelligence files and files that are not going to be released anytime soon for a variety of reasons, including people's personal preferences of the witnesses or for other maybe security reasons. I don't know, but there's probably a lot that are not released yet. But we also saw that it would be a great public relations exercise to do this, bring it out. Other countries were bringing some information out, and for New Zealanders to kind of sit up and take some notice of what's been happening over the years and what's still happening. It took some time for the files to be redacted, and during that time, I received letters from the then Chief of Defence, who was very good and quite open about what he was doing, what they were doing. But the problem was that when the files were released, they were released on the 23rd of December, and we do think that that was a careful decision on their part because nobody was. I had dozens and dozens and dozens of calls. I think I did 35 interviews in 2 days. But I had to say, I haven't seen the files yet. I don't know what's in them. And then the media were not interested after that. And I suspect in the background that that was the whole idea of releasing them right on Christmas. And of course, after Christmas, by the time my complimentary copy of the files had arrived, and we had that my air traffic controller and pilot colleague and I had gone through them, nobody wanted to know. It was old news. They were into the new year. Other things were happening. So it kind of neatly cut out the fact that were not able to talk about some of the sightings in it, and some of the sightings that we know were not in it, because we have interviewed people over the years, and we've also got sighting reports from our archives from previous investigators who that this person was interviewed by the military, by the Air Force, and they were told that they were to be quiet, not to speak to the media. The Air Force would deny it if they did. So there were people being put in their place and silenced even back then. And some of those sightings, they weren't in the files, so they have other significance, obviously, and are placed. Know they exist because the witnesses told us they were interviewed. And there's quite a number of major sightings like that. So it did create a little bit of a furore, but it did also lead to us doing the 60 Minutes interview, which was really great. We helped them put the program together, and that got a record of 60,000 hits on their website at the time, including some of the scientists who'd investigated the Kaikoura light sightings at the time and were wanting to say, this is wrong, we still think it was this. But times have moved on now, and with the interest now that we're seeing with scientists worldwide in the subject, many of them being experiencers themselves, I'd like to note, many of them having had phenomenal sightings themselves, they're now openly looking into the subject. And a lot of the stuff that people have been talking about, particularly investigators like myself and my former colleagues, we've been talking about some of these issues that they're bringing to light now, which they're getting a lot of kudos for. But, seasoned investigators worldwide have known about these things for a very long time, but were not listened to back then. But now we're getting the validation coming forward from science itself.
It's great. And so, in which ways is science validating it? How is our technologies or our science or our research actually getting to the point where we can validate it and say that it can't be dismissed so much? Because it seems like we're at a tipping point, as you sort of mentioned, that it's going to become a lot more accepted because both in the consciousness and spirituality world, people have their experiences, but we've got science and research backing it up really firmly. These two are coming together now, being married together, so that it really is undeniable, and hopefully, we get disclosure, like just
Yeah. Well, the scientists, I think, have moved forward in terms of what they know in terms of astrophysics for a start. When the 2021, I think it was, the James Webb Telescope came on tap, and that has really changed a lot of things, a lot of perspectives that astrophysicists have held. They now have new ideas about. So that was a huge leap forward, both for UFO stuff as well as other scientific methods. Um, because we now know how dense the universe and galaxies are with suns and planets. And if there's nothing else out there, well, we're horribly mistaken if we think there's no other life out there, and intelligent life at that. So, in terms of physics, where scientists have moved a long way in terms of physics, they're now able to do things they couldn't do before. They're able to move objects from one place to another. They're able to create all kinds of situations in laboratory environments which mimic in many ways what many experiencers have talked about. And I look at my own book, The Dual Soul Connection. Dr. Rudy Schild, who's a retired Harvard astrophysicist emeritus in the States, contributed to my book and was able to go through every single experience that I talked about and used in my book and validate it in some way scientifically. So he asked me at one point to send him the experience that I thought would most likely really throw him and make him think, oh, I don't know if I believe this. So I sent him a particular chapter I'd written, and he excitedly came back and said, actually, this is the one I understand the most in terms of physics, Suzy. So there's dozens and scores of scientists out there, probably hundreds worldwide. We look at Erling Strand and his colleagues in Norway studying the Hessdalen lights. They've been doing that for decades, and new information coming to light with new scientific discoveries. And we look at, I belong to the ISA Coalition for Extraterrestrial Research, global group, and Eamon Ansbro as our astronomer. making huge strides in tracking UFOs coming into our environment. So, we've got all these new areas that are opening up to scientists in terms of the UFO and contact subjects that are being followed up now at last.
It's so fascinating. And I think we've also got a long history, if we're honest about it, that many scientists do get help from our extraterrestrial friends. Many of them report going into, different states of consciousness and receiving downloads and then getting that aha moment around, the next step in physics or their science research they're to do. Nikola Tesla was sort of one of those people, and many people report having that contact. So I find that really, really fascinating. And you just touched on astrophysics, and just out of curiosity, do you or anyone that you sort of interact with regularly have any opinion on Three Eye Atlas and what it is?
Oh, it's a comet.
Mm-hmm.
It's a comet that's come from out in deep space. It's passing through our solar system. It's not the only one. I think it's the second one now. There's another one on its way. Um, and that is from two close friends of mine who, Rudy Schild, Dr. Rudy Schild, who's an astrophysicist, and also another close friend who I won't name, who studies solar flares, etc., a scientist. So, yeah, it's a comet. There's a lot of hype around it, and we could go deeply into that, but I'm not going to do it at the moment. But the reasons behind a lot of this hype is very interesting. Um, Very similar to other worldwide things that have happened in the past, like COVID, 9/11, etc. There's a lot of supposition around it.
Going into some of the hype around it, whether it's true or false, is it a bad thing for people start exploring or feeling into different narratives around it being different things, being operated by non-human intelligences or coming through to help us ascend? Is there anything we need to be wary about? I mean, whether these are true or not, they could still be quite helpful narratives in terms of expanding our awareness. Do you have any thoughts about that?
Yes, I agree that it can help to expand our awareness as long as we keep our feet on the ground. It's a good thing to speculate and theorize, and I think that's what Avi Loeb has been doing, has been theorizing and putting forward possibilities and perspectives and getting people to think about these issues. And the same sort of thing actually happened with good old orange Chinese lanterns. When they first started, I mean, they've been used overseas for years, but when they first arose in New Zealand and people were purchasing them and setting them off, I remember interestingly, the Air Force, a representative from the Air Force came on New Zealand television and said, "Don't worry about these lights. They're just orange lights in the sky. They are just Chinese lanterns." Um, which was an interesting statement that the Air Force felt they had to put a representative on TV to comment about Chinese lanterns because, as a sighting investigator in New Zealand, I knew that for about 18 months to 2 years prior to that, people had been reporting in New Zealand huge orange lights, not small Chinese lanterns, but huge orange orbs. So it was very interesting that suddenly Chinese lanterns came into New Zealand. The Air Force said, "Don't worry about orange lights in the sky, they're just Chinese lanterns." So the lanterns have made a lot of people think about UFOs. But unfortunately, there's always people who will take it a little bit too far. And I think that that's also happening with Atlas.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's great to theorize. Imagination is a good thing when it's used in context and used to create and used to move us forward in our thinking, but not to blind us in our thinking.
Yeah. And from the research that you did, what's your understanding of the orange Chinese lanterns and especially the very large ones that people saw?
Well, the very, very large ones we're talking about larger than a bus or a two-bedroom house, so they're not lanterns. And We don't know what they were, but knowing what I know about UFOs and the field that they can create around the actual material object, it's likely to have been a glow surrounding something to conceal it, or as part of its propulsion system. But we could also have been looking at some kind of plasma, which a scientist friend of mine is studying plasma in the atmosphere. So there's a number of possibilities there, but it certainly didn't seem to be aligned with Chinese lanterns. And I would
Mm.
encourage people, sometimes I've, looked at something on Facebook and suggested the possibility that what the person's photographing could be a Chinese lantern for a variety of reasons, but they want it to be something else. And I suggest to people that they set some off and have a look at their flight characteristics, because they definitely have definite flight characteristics that are easily identifiable.
Yeah. What I really enjoy about you is the grounded approach, but also the fact that you have very genuine contact and feel like the groundedness and being, just really analyzing things is really, really important. Come a long way as a humanity with the type of technology that we can actually create ourselves. A lot of it mimics off-world technology, and it's almost becoming slightly indistinguishable about what is a genuine off-world technology and what is a man-made technology. I'm wondering if you've got any kind of practical advice for people that see something. What can they do to kind of understand for themselves if it's man-made or off-world?
But there are five main factors that we look for a craft that's probably not ours. And there are things like being able to turn on a dime, go back on itself, do an acute angle turn without having to bank like an aircraft or whatever. Hypersonic speed, instantaneous, etc. So that people can do their homework on that. They can also do their homework on light configuration on aircraft. They can look on our website and find out what the legal lighting configuration is for helicopters and aircraft in New Zealand airspace, so that they can help to identify them. I'm often sent footage that's quite clearly, it's a light in the sky and it's got a flashing light on it, and people are saying, I saw this UFO, here's the footage, I own the copyright, don't put it on the net because I could earn some money off it. And I go back to them and say, look, I'm sorry, it's a helicopter. There's a strobe light. It's legally required. So people need to do some homework. We have a reality check page on our website, which is quite helpful and useful in that respect, which we're adding to all the time. Also, satellites are at varying altitudes above the planet, and people need to familiarize themselves with that fact as well, why some are moving faster and why some appear to be moving slowly. Some are close, some are far away. These are just very simple practical things that if people equip themselves with that information, it's going to be a lot more helpful to them if they do actually see something that cannot be logically explained.
Thank you for that. Also, with you get just so many sort of inquiries and access into all this research. Do you come across many ocean sightings or USOs or unidentified submerged objects? Do people see those much and report it to you?
Not as much as aerial objects, but New Zealand has quite a lot of USO sightings.
Mhm.
Around where I live, for example, some elderly people, on one of the points that juts out into Tauranga Harbour, saw some red and blue lights coming down at great speed. They didn't know whether it was going to crash into their peninsula or what was going to happen, and it entered the harbour into the deep channel, and they were able to see the lights moving along underwater from the cliff top until they disappeared. And the late Captain Bruce Cathy, who was an NAC pilot in New Zealand, he had a sighting in Kaipara Harbour of a metallic object just sitting on the bottom of the shallow harbour floor. So over the years, there's been a lot of sightings like that coming in and out of the water. Some people involved in aviation from 90 Mile Beach saw a massive object rise out of the water. and it was quickly surrounded off its surface or from within it by smaller objects that they described like gnats or flies buzzing around it, or they then took off in different directions. So there's a great deal going on in our own country, let alone overseas.
Fascinating. Gosh. Where do you see us going in the near future? And is there anything we can do as, just as humans to sort of support a disclosure and all this coming out where it's just kind of everyday kind of conversations, it's accepted, there's no kind of like people trying to hide this and that. But do you think we're going to make much progress in the next couple of years?
We have to ask ourselves, well, what kind of a disclosure are you talking about? If you're talking about disclosure of contact, well, that's already happened. We've now got people like Robert Salas, who was the captain at the Malmstrom Air Force Base sightings of UFO over a nuclear base. He was in charge of the startup, and they shut down the Minuteman missiles. The UFO shut them down, so he's an experiencer himself. After that experience, he began having memories of contact. He's a very close friend of mine, so I know quite a lot about that. And we've got people of high caliber, former military, spotless record, who's come forward and has campaigned for a long time for this information to be released. So that's a experiencer, and he's had this amazing other experience. So if we're looking at the disclosure of documents, well, I don't know how much we can actually trust that, particularly where America is concerned, but I'm sad to say other countries as well, who are probably keeping the most juicy sightings under wrap. Um, so what do we put all our eggs in one basket on some papers being released, and how do we know how valid they are and whether they've been altered or whether it's a cover up? We just can't trust any of that anymore. And as an experiencer, I'm an advocate of the actual disclosure is controlled by the ETs. They know exactly what they're doing as far as I'm concerned.
Mm-hmm.
They've been preparing for it for decades, much longer, and they're in control. They can speed it up if they want to. And in one of my contacts years ago, a couple of decades ago, we were told the time will they will increase sightings of their craft, not just lights in the sky. They will actually drop their light and people will see the craft. They'll see landed craft and they'll see entities by the landed craft. So that's one way of speeding the situation up and saying, we're here, this is disclosure, you can't discount it now because too many people have seen it. We've got celebrities and ex-military, and we've got ex-intelligence people, government people coming forward about their experiences, their sightings, etc., their information, whistleblowers who are having their myself. So it's a great hodgepodge out there. So when we say we want disclosure to happen, exactly what do we mean by that? Because there's so many avenues that it could take place or have already taken place. So I don't hold any opinion on when it's going to happen, because ETs have said to a group of humans I was part of, it's like a rubber band. So they pull this analogy out of your mind that you're familiar with and understand. And they say it's like a rubber band. Some days you're doing really well, the rubber band stretches right out. It's looking like we can reveal some more stuff to you. There's not much happening in terms of wars. You're all being very good. But then the next day, war breaks out somewhere, something terrible happens, and bang, the rubber band snaps back and you're only here again.
Yeah.
So it's a backwards and forwards movement, 10 steps forward, 3 steps back for quite a long time, I think. I hear a lot of people in the UFO field say, "Oh, we're ready for disclosure. Why don't they release this and that? We're ready for it." But when we look at the UFO community worldwide, it's minuscule compared to the total population. And a large part of the population doesn't know about UFOs, doesn't want to know, doesn't even think about them. So until more people are educated as to what is happening and become more aware, then nothing too dramatic, I don't think, is going to happen. But what the ETs have said to so many experiencers is the biggest thing that will prepare you for open contact with us is an elevation of spirituality. And if you look at what's happening worldwide, in terms of lack of spirituality, wars, cruelty, all kinds of deception happening at all levels, then we've got a long way to go. Because why would they come down here to assist a race of people or a civilization of people who are warlike and may turn on them, as has been evidenced in the past where they've been shot down? So they're waiting and watching. But running alongside that, of course, we have all of the earth changes and the severe weather changes to our planet that are happening at the moment, and the solar flares affecting our magnetic field and humanity. So we've got something that all playing out on the side as well. And, by all accounts, that's probably going to increase. So they're saying that our spirituality is connected to mass consciousness, right? So every person who wakes up and understands that we have to be better, we have to do better, adds to the positive nature of the etheric field or the mass consciousness of the planet. And that is one way of elevating our well-being and our future, is to recognize that we have to live together and we have to cooperate and we have to have compassion.
I agree. I sometimes feel like I live in a bubble because, my occupation is primarily as an energy healer and a consciousness coach. And wherever I go, people are very open to talk about their extraterrestrial experiences and their contact experiences. Most people are either believers or have experienced it in some shape or form. And most people I interact with are very much on the path of being amazing humans, looking after their own backyard and looking after each other and doing their best to kind of evolve
Assisting
themselves.
us to reach that 100th monkey position, where something that's not usual or not prevalent necessarily on the planet, more and more people achieve, and eventually it flips and suddenly it's normal, and that's how everyone should be and wants to be. So we haven't really reached that point yet.
No, we haven't. I like the point that you talked about disclosure and what is disclosure and what disclosure are we actually waiting for. And I enjoyed that because it is around that perspective, like what are we actually waiting for? I think there's probably enough disclosure, but for some of us get stuck in that mindset of disclosure has to come from the authority or from the government, but then that's still coming from a level of consciousness that we have placed other people in authority of what we are to believe. So maybe we just draw a line in the sand and say, well, what's been hidden in terms of files is in the past, and we've got a lot of contact going on right now, so we don't need to like dig up the past or wait for the past documents to be released in order for us to believe we've got all this other evidence around us all the time if we're looking in the right places.
Yes, I think there's a lot of controversy amongst experiencers around what contact constitutes, what it is, and what some people are claiming as contact. So I think that's a whole area of the contact field that needs discussion and not decisions made, but things put into perspective. Um, I feel very sorry for my generation and within a broad band either side of me, because we're the ones who, in general, had the transportation on board craft. So we've actually been in the environment and we've stood in front of an ET and felt the power, felt the fear, felt the awe, all of that. And we can describe the environment on a craft, and we have a lot of information that would be useful to scientists. But it's interesting that worldwide, people like myself and others are being marginalized. In fact, contact people in general are being marginalized, and we are noticing that only a selected few who seem to have some approval from further up the pecking order, often associated with intelligence agencies. They are making wonderful headway and they're being supported and promoted. But others who've had a lifetime of experience and have a lot of information from that experience are being marginalized, being kept out of situations where they could be informing the public of what they know. So there are some people who have experiencers who have YouTube channels where they're interviewing people who've had experiences such as my own, because we have a great deal yet to learn from those experiences. We can go back decades and we can find, for example, I talk about alien technology that I have seen. And I had an attempt on my life at the 2018 UFO Congress in the States because someone didn't like what I was putting out there, and I was threatened, and I was sprayed with a concoction of lung bugs that nearly killed me when I got back to New Zealand. So it is quite dangerous out there in some respects for experiencers coming out with that kind of information. So I have seen technology on craft decades ago that is now coming out in our own technology on the planet, albeit in a more juvenile form. They have not been able to imbue it with the consciousness aspect which they have on the craft. But it is like a copy, a more naive copy of that technology. Now, are we to believe that we are following the same line of technology as the ETs have done over thousands of years? Or are we to assume that someone has back engineered that technology and is making a lot of money from it?
Really, really key point there. And I'd like to just talk about that a little bit more, because we seem to have lost this whole century to different agendas around the technologies that we could have had already implemented on this planet Earth. And even just last week, I was over in California and visited the Integratron, which was going to be a time capsule and inspired by information from the Venusians. However, just the night before this time capsule was going to be turned on, or this time machine, that person mysteriously died of a heart attack. And there's a repeated story. Sadly, a familiar story where people can get attacked for having this off-world technology and information. Because you shared your own personal experience of the lung bugs and that sort of attack, is there any way, and maybe you've been informed by the ETs, that we as a humanity, when we are gifted this technology through downloads or through contact experiences, what is the safest way to get it out there that doesn't cause health harm to us? Is it like an open source method, or have you got any insights to that?
Well, it depends what the technology is and how much information you've got about it. I mean, I've seen technology and I know what it does. I don't know how to build it. I don't know what powers it. And, I was cornered by two guys at the conference late at night in a corridor, and I was asked, come on, you know more about the propulsion of craft. We want to know what it is. And they were very intimidating, but I don't know the ins and outs of the propulsion of the craft. I'm not a scientist, but I do know how some things appear to work in terms of what they do. Um, so, if a scientist has a download and they understand that download, then they can do something with it. But as you said, for the run-of-the-mill person who's not a scientist, where do they go with it? Well, I have a whole raft of scientists up my sleeve that I know overseas, so someone can talk to me about it and I can put them in touch. But really, it's a matter of keeping quiet about it until you've quietly done your homework on who to contact.
Do you know if we have any crash retrieval sites here in New Zealand?
Not that I'm aware of. We had the Ngatea landing site, and there was a lot of controversy over that. But as far as I'm aware, and every single prior researcher who's now passed on, I've never heard of a landing site. That doesn't mean to say that one hasn't happened.
No, I haven't heard of any either. So I was just curious about that. I have heard of Australia having a crash retrieval site. Does that align with what you understand as well?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah, that's interesting. Do you have any opinions around if we start or if the US starts to do nuclear testing again? I don't know, do you feel like the extraterrestrials will come in and kind of intervene, or do you think we're on our own in terms of sorting out our human behavior?
Uh, are you talking about testing out the like exploding bombs in a
Mm,
test?
mm,
I don't know that that will happen anymore. I doubt that it would be allowed by the ETs. I think it would
mm,
be stopped before it got there. I mean, there are quite a number of occasions where UFOs have been seen over military sites, like the Maelstrom Air Force Base incident. Excuse me. And they come in and show what they can do. So they shut down the Minuteman missiles, and same sort of thing has happened on other military bases worldwide. So they know exactly what we're doing. As to whether they would let any, a war occur or any testing to take place, I don't know.
mm. Cool.
But they did show me, and I've written about it, a chapter about it in my book, what a nuclear explosion does. And I was just reading recently on the net about how we have now discovered how a huge actually radiate out, affect magnetic fields further out from our planet. And maybe 3 decades ago, that's what the ETs showed me in a room where there was what I called the galaxy screen, and they created a hologram of the planet showing the time of the Hiroshima and Nagasaki explosions, bombs, and how that reverberation went right out through our solar system and beyond. So anything we do of that nature, even, for example, the Tongan volcanic eruption, that kind of force can be registered by them elsewhere and can affect them negatively. So that's what they're aware of and watching for.
Interesting. Okay, that's insightful. Thank you. If you could click your fingers, and I always ask my guests this, if you could click your fingers and have us as humanity wake up to a truth, what would that be? And then I'd also like you to just perhaps expand that a little bit around hopefully stimulating a conversation about what we can do, what everyone who's listening can do to help us all become more cohesive. And what I mean by that is that from where I stand, I can witness a lot of disharmony, even in groups and factions that say that they're of higher consciousness. So there's a lot of, debate around people having certain groups, having certain information around UFOs or crafts or contact. And rather than working in harmony or having a certain level of tolerance for other people's perspectives, there seems to be a lot of kind of infighting. If you could click your fingers and things would change, how would you see that changing?
Quite a few things spring to mind, Gina, so it's really hard to uh, refine it. But I would just say clean up your own life,
Mm-hmm.
and everything that that might involve. Because if we all did that, instantly the world would be a better place, and we would be more aware of the needs of each other. Um, we would be more stable and hopefully compassionate people. Of course, cleaning up your life might have different connotations and meanings to different people, but I think you probably understand what I mean. Just working on your own self, how you lead your life, and that one sentence of cleaning up your own life can involve everything from recycling to growing your own vegetables, um, to helping with your neighbors, looking after your family, caring about pets and animals and nature, thinking of the planet. There's a whole raft of things that can come under just that one title.
Yeah, beautiful, beautiful. And letting go of some of the distractions too. We're easily distracted. So, like you say, cleaning up your own life and staying focused on yourself and your immediate sphere of influence, your family, your friends, your community.
Yep. I'd just like to mention one thing, Gina, that we sort of haven't touched on. That's AI.
Mm.
Working with experiencers, I'm in touch with a lot of people worldwide, therapists, people like myself who work with experiencers. And what we're seeing is people are basing their contact, typing things into AI and being these fantastic answers that is setting those people up in a number of ways, either through ego or through fear or whatever. So you have people, I know one person overseas who believes that it's his responsibility now to save the planet, and he's gone completely over the edge. So there's a real danger happening with people's egos and people's curiosity, and the infighting that you mentioned before has takes place in all spheres of life. Unfortunately, that's the ego at play, but it's leading a lot of people to consult with AI and instead of consulting with a human. So, there's a danger that people could fall into there.
Well, I would love if you've got time to just spend a bit more time talking about this because even just recently, when I was at we had a local CE5 retreat for a couple of days, and our workshops and our contact sessions didn't have any AI focus, but that came up all the time as the main topic of conversation. People just could not get enough of talking about how AI is interfacing with us. And like you say, people really starting to fully believe that they are interfacing and talking with a non-human intelligence.
Yes, yes.
And while it's non-human, it's not extraterrestrial.
No.
um, and yes, so let's talk into that because I've not heard anything really positive or not witnessed anything really positive. Like you say, there seems to be a lot of ego. I feel people perhaps who are a little bit more vulnerable or maybe just feeling a bit lost or not having developed discernment to a certain level for themselves can fall into this kind of maybe trap of believing what the AI is saying to them. AI is so clever. It does know how to say what you want to hear. It's got that, it's very, very intelligent. But you're an experiencer, I'm an experiencer. I am grateful I've had experiences with extraterrestrials prior to AI coming into the mainstream, because that way I've got discernment and I can feel the frequency of when it's a very genuine contact download or message or a moment compared to AI. So yeah, let's kind of dive into that. What would you like to say about that?
Well, I think I'd have to say that the American model of contact is very different to the rest of the world. Um, Sometimes when I've been speaking in the States, I've had people come up to me and say, "It's been amazing listening to you. I didn't know that people in other countries had this kind of thing going on. I thought it was just an American thing." Which is really surprising. It probably is different now since the COVID times, and we've moved on since a lot of things have come out. But that was the attitude, and certainly some of the terminology that's used in the American model of contact and the attitudes towards contact is very different. So if we take that a bit further, we can see that. A lot of groups in the States have become, and individuals have become highly competitive. There's money to be made. There's you can utilize the subject in a variety of ways, and you can make an income from it. And so people have a vested interest in what they're saying and keeping ahead of what other people are saying and saying things that are more fantastic than what other people are saying. And this is a trap, the ego trap that a lot of people are falling into. Um, and and it distorts the entire contact field, and it shuts out what's happening in the rest of the world. Because let's face it, when most people think of UFOs, disclosure, contact, abductions, they think of the States.
Mm.
And that's where it's at, and that's where it needs to be, and that everything that comes out of there is believable and great, and it's not. And I have been quietly watching a number of what would you call them? Influencers, experiencers who are acting as influencers in the contact field, and been watching them starting to attack each other and criticize each other and scuttle each other, and they're starting to implode. This is another thing that the ETs said to me years ago, is that it will get to the point where you will feel as if you are totally alone, because everything happening around you has just gone beyond the realm of normal.
Mm-hmm.
And that they said there'll be people coming out of the woodwork in all directions, claiming all kinds of things to do with contact, all kinds of increasingly fantastic. But when things really start to happen, and I don't know when that might be, I could be gone by then. I could be watching it from somewhere else. But when things start to happen, it's initially is not going to be pretty for people like us. This is what the ETs said. They warned, if you get into this, you get into it with commitment for the long haul.
Mm-hmm.
And you are careful and you're cautious and you have work with integrity, because time will come where it'll all start to implode, and there'll be a lot of blame put on experiencers. So shifting blame, shifting responsibility onto experiencers, and those people who have been using it as some kind of stepping stone financially or otherwise are going to disappear back into the woodwork very quickly. So, we don't know what lies ahead in terms of contact. We're constantly seeing the little sign of a threat. We're constantly seeing that contact could be a threat. And we're seeing that from some of the whistleblowers coming forward, some of the aviation people, a lot of the intelligence people. You just hear that little signal bell go off in your head every now and again when you listen carefully to what they're saying. Well, if they decide to make it a threat, so that they can do massive armament in the States and shoot down whatever comes in, the targets are going to become the experiencers.
Mm.
We are going to be the people who are friends with the aliens. So I think that people need to wake up to the massive claims that they're making, and the massive stages that they're setting to put themselves on, and really think what they're doing to the subject, and is what they're saying actually real and truthful, or is it to be better than someone else?
I agree. And I sort of had a slight feeling when you were earlier in our conversation stating that some people seem to be very supported on the public stage in terms of talking about contact, and yet there are the people with very genuine experiences who don't get that support level.
Well, I know experiences, and including myself, and scientists who've been silenced using a variety of means. I knew an experiencer who died, and there's been several. So this is an area to be very careful in. Um, it's not all pretty, and it's not all fame and glory. It's hard work. It should be hard work. It needs to be hard work.
Yeah. Do you think that the extraterrestrials also help protect those who are very genuine? I mean, I know obviously they have not protected everyone, because there are clearly people who have lost their lives to this cause and had health harm caused to them. But do you think that at a certain level, many people are not in the limelight as a way of protection in terms of yeah, just, staying alive.
Yes, I do. Some experiences are warned that they're going to be put into a silent time for a reason. Stay out of the public eye or whatever. Um, and and that's by the ETs, not by governments or whatever. But I think that the ETs can protect you to a certain extent if they're allowed to in the greater scheme of free will, etc. But they can't protect you from everything. And I remember them saying, "We can do so much for you. The rest is up to you.
Mm.
If you're in this and you're committed to it, the rest will be up to you. There's only so much we can do."
Yeah.
I had a horrific car accident in 1974. Um, Someone tried to stop me from having that car accident because a few minutes before it happened, I was talking to a group of people and I had this message in my head, go now, you have to go now. And I didn't because to me, my upbringing, it was impolite to walk away from someone who was talking to you. So when I'd finished talking, I got in my car and scooted down the road and had an accident.
Mm.
So this is how it goes. But several months later, I was suffering all kinds of spinal and neck problems from whiplash, etc. And they took me onto a craft and put in different implants, shall we say, to help to correct that and to assist me.
That's
So they
incredible.
can do
Wow.
some things, they can't
Mhm.
do others. And it's also up to you. You know,
Mm.
I made a bad choice.
But what an incredible example of showing just how important it is to follow their intuitive, knowing, and that message that we get, and how impacting it can be if we don't follow it, but also that they can help us, with medical advancement and actually helping our health as well. Is there any messages from your contact around AI? Like, have the extraterrestrials said anything about this phase of humanity that we're in?
No, we're going to go through various phases on our way to a higher evolution. But funnily enough, they haven't really mentioned AI. And although I have been in an augmented reality situation a number of times on craft, which is far in advance of watching Avatar with glasses on. Um, Uh, we hear a lot of people claiming that they use AI, the ETs use AI, but I've never really heard them refer to that at all.
No, I've never heard an extraterrestrial say that. I mean, I've definitely heard them say that their consciousness is at a level that they can,
Yes,
interact and interface with technologies. But
yes,
I've never heard AI being any key part of their existence, as we know AI anyway.
yes.
I don't really have any opinion on this because I'm still sort of thinking it through. There has been evidence of extraterrestrials working through our human technologies like radios and lightning detectors and EMF detectors and so forth. Now, given that they can interface with these kind of technologies and send cadences or noise, or give us the awareness that they're present through these technologies, is it plausible for them to actually be in our AI and, as some people claim, actually, influencing the words that come out of AI in terms of talking with us? I mean, this is the sort of line that some people go down who are really fully invested in believing that they are talking with extraterrestrials through our AI interfaces.
Well, I'm sure that they could do that if they wanted to, but I would question whether they wanted to. These are a very advanced, intelligent, and compassionate beings, and I can't imagine why they would want to do something like that that's going to harm humans and make our chaotic situation on this planet even worse. Um, they can contact people with a single thought.
Mm.
They can go over cities with technology, and they referred to sweeping the population. So they can go over and register over houses where you're asleep, and they can register your energetic signature and know how spiritual you are or how aware you are or whatever. So I don't think they need to use AI, which is turning out to be quite damaging in some ways, to influence us at all. They just don't need to do that.
Yeah, I think that's a really key message for people to take home, that extraterrestrial contact happens just one on one, like you and the beautiful being next to you. They can contact you directly. They do not need a computer, they do not need AI to make that contact. So beautiful. Oh, thank you so much, Suzy, for your time today. And I just want to thank you on behalf of humanity and the audience for all that you contribute, because you have been a lifelong contributor to this space, to listening to people's stories, as well as doing really foundational research that is just so important to our understanding of our contact with extraterrestrials. And you're pivotal. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Gina. I appreciate that. Kind words. Thank you.